Sahana vavatu, sahano bhunaktu, sahaviryam karavavahe, tejasvina vadhitamastu, ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Let's revise some characteristics of a jnani who has undergone through a lot of work upon themselves. Krishna says that a jnani, according to chapter 12, is a perfect devotee. What does Krishna consider a perfect devotee? And what attributes qualify to be an expanded and integrated, a holistic person? And then we said a few Sanskrit words. I'll just revise them now. Firstly, we said adveshta sarvabhutanam. This means lack of hating. Now, what is hating? Hating, or to hate, is a prolonged dislike. So usually we start to dislike something. There's a small dislike. It's not a big deal. As the longer that dislike lasts, the more we build on emotions and stories pertaining to that object of dislike. And the more we do that, the more that dislike grows. Therefore, dislike and hate are one and the same. They're the one coin from two different sides. So dislike starts, dislike intensifies, and then eventually we now call it hate. That's why the Sanskrit word for both dislike and hate is one and the same. What is this word? Dvesha. You've heard raga dvesha many times, I'm sure. What is dvesha? It is a compound word consisting of dvi, this means two, and visham, which means poison. So this means two poisons. What are these two poisons? Not only does dvesha poison the heart of the hater, but also poisons the heart of the hated. But also, what are these two poisons? Dislike, but also hate. They are one and the same poison. How is this hate expressed? It is expressed as, or in speech, in the form of passive aggressive. What is passive aggressive? Passive aggressive is not being direct, and yet still not wishing well, still being in a sarcastic manner, not wishing the person, not being straight, not being honest. I do not wish to come together and find a resolution here. If we put this hate in many minds, we call this war. So what is a war? War is when many hearts have hate, and those hearts come together, and then we have a war. In fact, if you think about World War II, it was nothing but a particular group of people having a strong dislike for another group of people. The question is, what is the solution to overcome this dislike? Because dislike can come very subtle. And the solution is to have a purpose in life. That means to get busy. That means to find your role and then fully participate in the role. Now, the question is, how to discover your purpose in life. How do you discover your role in life? Because we often say you need to discover something that you're good at or something that you're involved with. How do you discover your swadharma?
Which is the intersection of my likes and which are according to dharma. Like the job that I'm doing right now, I like to do programming, and it is according to dharma. It's not harming others and all.
Okay, so you're not going.
So I might do. I don't know, there are many things. Like, for example, I like to have something, so I can't go about robbing people just to achieve what I want, because it's not dharmic. But I want to, like, for example, I want to have a house. So to achieve that house, I follow dharmic ways to achieve it. Instead of robbing, I will do a job. That's what I think.
All right, so what I'm hearing is having an attitude shift towards what you're already doing. So suppose that you're right now doing programming, or you're doing some research, or building a house, or doing some architecture, or doing some consulting, or some management, or you're a CEO. It doesn't matter. So this means whatever we're doing, we can simply change our shift from this is just an ordinary work to finding ways on how to make it more interesting. So this means that, see, we often say, what is my purpose? What do we first say? Look into what you're doing right now. Stop looking elsewhere. And then ask, knowing what I'm doing now, could I find ways that if I did, this work would be at least twice more fun, twice more entertaining, twice more kind of inspiring, worthy of waking up and saying, I want to do it. Yes, Robert.
Yeah, I've worked in this field for quite a while, helping business executives find meaning in their work and transfer from one line of occupation to another. And I think the mistake people make is they try to find the thing that is their path, right? It can be many things as long as you feel passionate about it, it has meaning for you, and you feel you're making a contribution to others. The activity itself doesn't really matter, you'll find that out. It's what's behind the activity that's important.
Yeah, it's what's behind the activity that's important. And if you just focus on what is behind that long enough, finding it more interesting, then that is going to lead to different kinds of thoughts. And those thoughts are going to then inspire you to look in a much more, a slightly larger way. This means do not kind of, escape whatever you're doing right now, but rather accept that what you're doing now could be actually what your purpose is.
And very important, it's not just self-centered, but you feel you're contributing to other people. There's a lot more happiness and meaning in your work if you feel you're doing that, rather than just making money.
Good. Okay, good. Any other comments on what Robert is saying?
It's actually when you do something, you're doing your best without even putting an effort to it. The best of your effort comes out when you're doing something, and that's what you should listen to, and you should be aware of that. And I think that's what your purpose becomes. It's when you don't really have to put effort because it's there, it's already there for you to do that. And I'm talking about things like you may be good at carpentry, and but somebody could be struggling to do the carpentry work, and yet someone will just do it with closing their eyes. So any skill like that will come automatically into you. So your Swadharma is part of that.
Yeah. Okay. What I'm hearing is start from what you already value. Like ask, what do I consider important or significant or worthy of pursuing or worthy of investigating into? Suppose you're an environmentalist and you care about the environment. Maybe, you think that the oceans could use some help there or some kind of a clean mechanism. Then you just say, well, on the basis of my value, what can I now do? I can go on the beach and I can start, kind of do a little prayer. That's a start. Not much, but it's still a prayer. And then that prayer in itself is going to cause a different transformation of your thoughts, which is then going to cause you to do something else. So this means you always ask, what do I already value? Because there's not a single person who doesn't know what they value. You just ask. If I tell you, go to a library, where's the first section you're going to walk into? That's probably one of your values. Everyone's going to walk towards something, right? Because this means there's an inherent attraction for some topic, some subject matter. For me, it's usually computers, programming, psychology, what else? And let's put self-help, basically. So those three areas I always go to. Hasn't changed since a kid. Okay, this hate that we're talking about, it also expresses in the person's life as they go through their pursuit. And this 4 stages I want to give you can also be equated to those 5 bhakti stages that we're going through. So the first stage is level 1. We'll call this a fanatic. We'll just give it some, name there. What is a fanatic? The one who strongly dislikes opposing views. I think this is what Pawan was saying initially. So this means if you hold one view and I hold something that's opposing, I will strongly look down upon you. This is how we mostly start in the much earlier years. Then through the course of time, we mature onto level 2. This is called a beginner. And this is whereby the person sees divinity only in idols and has a lack of hate for those who share the same beliefs. So this means you're a friend to those who share the same common beliefs as you. Therefore, that's your circle of influence. Then you got level 3. This is whereby one's practicing. That means they're doing the best they can. This means the person starts to see divinity in spiritually mindful, and they are indifferent to those who are yet to develop this mindfulness. I didn't say to those who are immature or samsaris. So we have to be careful with our language. For those who are yet to discover a much larger vision of life, those who are yet developing their maturity. So this means the person is only interested in concentrating in the circle of influence that, you know, is on the same line as them. And when they see someone that is not there, they're kind of lost, you know, they're lost in their direction, they don't now start putting them down and say, oh, you know what, the samsari, you know, has got such a long way to go. No, so this means you don't do that. And then level 4 is the best kind of bhakta. This is whereby the person is capable of objectivity towards all levels. This is a jnani. Neither hates, neither loves, just stands in between, witnessing both. That's a best kind of bhakta. The one who doesn't get involved in this nor this, but rather observes both because you understand both. When you understand both, you're able to observe both. If I don't understand, then what happens? Observing becomes very hard. Then I'm compelled to, whatever I'm observing, to judge it. But the moment I understand it, then that judgment simply leaves. Then I'm able to observe without putting a spin or some kind of a subjective notion onto it. And what are the benefits of relinquishing a strong dislike in our life? One of the benefits, obvious, is you know, we have more energy, because hate takes a lot of consuming, a lot of brain power, a lot of emotional toll on the person. And is it possible to be happy if the little process is in the background and going, you know, dislike, 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 dislike? No way. So this means we can pretend to be spiritual, but if there's a thought process in the background that's saying, I do not like some other school who's saying this, then that in itself is going to contribute to the person's lack of fulfillment, lack of completion. So this means spirituality is not about saying, oh, I'm full, I am complete. And yet at the same time, you go to some country or some situation, you see Mr. or Mrs. You know, politician, and then you go, okay, well, you know, I wish they were, you know, out of there, they shouldn't be born and so on. So you put all these comments onto them. This is not what spirituality is about. You're simply understanding where the person's coming from without having the need to put them either up nor down. Then Maitraha sees everyone as a friend. This means has a sense of concern and empathy. This means a wise person is not cold. A wise person sees a woman trip over her groceries, and he just stands there, or she just stands and goes, no, you know, I'm free of this world. I don't need to participate. This is not how it is. This is all just escapism, right? In the name of spirituality. A wise person has a sensitive mind, and the more sensitive you are, then you're able to discern what needs to be done and what needs to be left alone. The more sensitive you are, then the more assertive you become towards those areas whereby you can actually do something. Where you can't, you just put that away because someone else is much better at that than you are. This means we don't waste our time over those things which we clearly do not have any control. For example, the story Ratnakara, you know, tied Sage Narada, Sage Narada being tied onto the tree. And then Ratnakara said, give me money or I will kill you. He started to consult him. He said, no, well, let me soothe you. Let me see where you're coming from. I didn't say, oh, you know, you're so ignorant, you know, and you're wasting your time. You're going to get reborn and into a very unfortunate family because of your papa karma. And you cannot kill me. I'm free. I'm beyond this world. That's not what Narada said. Narada simply consulted Ratnakara and said, he asked him a few questions. And then what happened? This same person who couldn't find his way in life became Sage Valmiki. And Sage Valmiki wrote the Ramayana. So this means a wise person acts where he or she can. They don't say, oh, you're beyond hope. I'm not going to bother helping you. This is not what spirituality is about. This means taking action, being assertive. Okay, and then Kshami. Kshami is forgiveness or accommodation. What is forgiveness? I don't feel the other has wronged me. Sometimes we feel that the other has wronged you. What is forgiveness? I don't feel that the other has wronged me. Why? Because of 3 factors. Number 1, there are unknown factors that you may not know. 2, there may be misinterpretation on both of your sides. You may have misinterpreted the situation, and the other person may have misinterpreted according to limited information at that time. I think I just told a story, as I said to, you know, I was in the bush and 3 boys confronted me. This was a long time ago. It was like 10, 15 years ago. And they thought that I was stealing their weed because I looked like that. So this means they didn't have all of the information, and on the basis of what I looked like, they assumed, oh, it must be him because, you know, he kind of has his back backwards and he's barefoot and he's, you know, by himself. He's probably going to steal more weed in the jungle. So this means on the basis of incomplete information, the person makes a false assumption. Thus, then this conflict ensues. So this means I do not feel that I've been wronged. Why? Because they couldn't have helped it. They simply didn't have enough information. Thus, they thought that I was stealing their cannabis. And number 3 is no one chooses to be ignorant. Does anyone get bored and say, you know, in this life, I'm going to be ignorant. I'm not going to know everything. And I'm just going to sort of be, you know, clouded, veiled by what I know. And I'm just going to remain that place. Nobody likes to be ignorant. So this means you're not angry at the person. What's the person angry at? Ignorance. In other words, ignorance hurts. It's not the instrument through which ignorance has expressed. What's the instrument? The body. Is anyone born with total knowledge? Absolutely not. This means we're all born ignorant. On the basis of that alone, I can start to rationalize and say, this person doesn't have all the information. So yes, if they have hurt me, okay. But I also have hurt someone else on the basis of my ignorance. Then santushtaha. A wise person is complete. It means the wise person puts things in the right perspective. It means my essence lacks nothing. You don't stop there. At the same time, while this body, mind, intellect instrument is given to me for a short amount of time to be used wisely. So there's 2 aspects here, right perspective. 1, yes, it is true. I'm already complete, eternal. But you don't stop there. You still have to address the world. And you say, this body, mind, intellect instrument is given to me for a short amount of time. Thus, it is to be used wisely. If you don't acknowledge the second, then the person gets stuck in this bubble of so-called liberation, and they actually, you know, don't participate in this world. Vidyaranya from Panchadashi said a nice line. He said, Alpa bhogena tushyati. Those who are content with the little that they have are indeed wise people. So in the same way, what is a wise person? Whatever you have, you're content with. What is one who is yet to be wise? Whatever I have, I want more. Thinking that more is going to fill me up. Whereas a wise person already knows my essential nature is fullness. Let's put this more practical and more applicable. We need to apply what's called asaktihi. What is asaktihi? It is lack of claiming ownership of objects. This is the root cause that prevents one from having this completion, this santushtaha. So this means how to come closer to this place of completion. The answer is asaktihi. What does asaktihi mean? Lack of claiming ownership of what you have. So the question now is, what's the difference between possessing and ownership? I possess this lipstick. Okay, I possess this. Versus I take ownership of this. What's the difference between these 2?
Is possessive like you have possession of it right now, but ownership is it's always going to be yours, or it's always been yours?
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I get what you're saying. Good. I'm going to get to that. Yes.
It means owning the lipstick, but saying I am the lipstick.
It's like the trusteeship.
Yeah, lovely. Okay. So Mina's used the keyword that I was going to just bring in. So we have to talk about what is trusteeship. So possessing is a fact. I possess this lipstick. This means it is in the possession relative to this body, right? This bottle is in possession relative to this body. If it was relative to your body, it is still possessed to whomever it is closer to. It is still possessed to that person. What is ownership? Ownership is where I claim that I own this. This means I make it as though it is my own, as though I made it, as though I am sustaining it, as though without me, this thing would have never had its chance of daylight, as though without me, this thing cannot exist. Whereas the very truth is this thing existed before I was even born, right? It's in form of elements in the earth, in a form of color and dye. in a form of an idea in someone's head way before I was even born. So this means it is not an issue to possess. What is an issue? When I take what I possess and I turn it into a sense of ownership. Now, what kind of distortions does ownership create before we get onto how to resolve this? What kind of problems does it, or issues does it create? First of all, my self-image gets entangled in whatever I own. So this means now, suppose I have I own a kid, a very smart kid. The moment I own my child, then what am I going to do when there is not a smart kid? I'm going to look down upon them. Oh, my child is so smart compared to that child. So now you bring your whole self-image and you give it into, you literally pop it inside the object that you've claimed as yours. So this means now you've given all your power away onto this object. Now suppose your kid fails a grade and you own your kid, right? Because it's my son, it's my daughter. So this now means your self-image being tied with your son or daughter. Now your self-image is going to go down as fast as their grades are going to go down. Now we start looking down upon those, like, whoever doesn't have my car is not as successful as I am. So the moment I make that car mine, ownership, then fountain of issues start to come. Even in knowledge, in reference to Advaita Vedanta, Pramana, we say, I have non-dual wisdom. That school doesn't. I am so much better. Happens all the time. In other words, we start to compare our knowledge compared to other schools, and we start to put them down. In other words, the knowledge has nothing to do with helping you. It has to do with owning and then being proud on the basis of what I own. So this means the pramana hasn't been used as a means of knowledge, but rather as another object to add onto my identity, thus to expand my sense of I. Also happens in political figures, like political positions. It's very hard to relinquish a position sometimes. So the person gets caught up, because now they're enjoying their it's my position, it's my presidency, it's my whatever it is. And this means it's very hard to actually relinquish that. Same thing happens in family businesses all the time, right? One of the family businesses, one of them is unable to let go. So then instead of simply just saying, here's now the position for you to take over, it becomes much more complex than that. All because the person has placed their I into the object. They made that object, that business, that son, daughter, spouse, anything mine. And then what's the result of this? The moment you claim something as yours, when you own it, then it enters your bubble of expectations. Because who's the owner? I am. And the person whoever that I am is, has what's called raga dvesha, likes and dislikes. So this means if I make this mine, then it has to get popped into my likes and dislikes. So this means automatically I will now limit this according to what I like and what I don't like. So never mind that this is red. If I don't like red, then I'm not going to like it on the basis that it's red. So this means I cannot enjoy the fullness of what is present only because I made something as mine. Therefore, we're not trying to now say, don't possess anything. Possession is absolutely fine. But the moment we start to get ourselves involved, as if, without me, they cannot live, without them, I would have not been here, etc., then you have this whole psychological drama that ensues. And this is why, by the way, Vedas prescribe the vanaprastha stage. So there's 4 stages in life. We start with Brahmachari, right? So Brahmachari is whereby you start life learning, right? Learning about, your topic in schools. And then you go through Grihastha. Grihastha is householder. This means the person goes through relationships, through job, through marriage, through children. And then you come to this age, or whatever that age, we cannot really classify what that age is. And then you come to Vanaprastha. Vanaprastha is whereby you start to reflect on what you've done, right? And you start to reprioritize your life. You say, okay, so, I've done this and this and this, and I'm kind of successful. I'm relatively successful. So let me now put more time into myself. I've been putting all my time into children and the society and being someone. So let me put more time onto myself. And then after Vanaprastha comes Sannyasa. What is Sannyasa? Sannyasa is realizing even after you go through vanaprastha, after you start to reflect on what you've done in your life, you come to a point and you say, you know, even though I've had a relatively successful life, I'm still not quite happy. I'm not still completely fulfilled. Therefore, let me now address the bigger fundamental questions of life. Therefore, sannyasa is for that clarity whereby you discover that even a successful life is still not the final solution. It's still not the final answer. Therefore, a sannyasi starts to look at those questions. Who am I? What's the cause of this universe? What's my relationship to you, to the universe, to God, to everything? Now, the question is going to come, what is sannyasa in the modern age? Because how do we usually understand sannyasa, right? According to our scriptures. I mean, never mind vanaprastha, right? Vanaprastha is, you know, already in the forest. But what is sannyasa in the modern age? Because sannyasa is one who reflects the bigger questions of life. Sannyasa, does there someone want to answer this?
A monk? Is it a monk?
Or
priest? Or...
Okay, that's one possibility. It's certainly not the only. Okay.
Retirement?
Yeah.
Retirement?
Vanaprastha is supposed to be retirement. However, we also have to adapt these terms to the modern times. We cannot stick into these traditional concrete terms and then try to abide by them in the modern 21st century.
Existential crisis?
I mean, existential crisis sort of comes before the vanaprastha stage, and you start to, you know, inquire, okay, has everything that I've done, has that really brought me fulfillment? And then you go into sannyasa. Okay, so the modern sannyasa basically is reflecting on the fundamental questions of life, just like we're doing right now on the Gita, while at the same time actively participating in the world, being an active participant while looking into the nature of I, just like you're doing right now. That is the modern version of a sannyasa. I'm saying this because, you know, when we read about sannyasa, it's like, oh man, I'm supposed to be in the forest. I'm supposed to let go of my spouse, of my food, of everything. I'm not supposed to let go of my Facebook, right? So this is, you know, we have to be flexible. And this is why Vedanta has survived for such a long time, by the way, because you'll notice that some schools have gone out of existence. Why? Because they're refusing to adapt according to what is true in these present times. Whereas Vedanta maintains its essence while at the same time is able to flexibly put you in these, it's still able to be flexible according to these terms. The question is, what is the solution to relinquishing ownership? We've now seen the problems caused by ownership, right? How do we relinquish this sense of ownership? And I want to bring what Mina has said, and that is convert that ownership into trusteeship. You're endowed with this body right now that you're listening with this instrument that's able to capture this world. You're endowed with that. You're gifted. You're blessed that instrument, no doubt. For how long? For a limited amount of time. By what? By the grand order, which we call Ishvara. Therefore, on the basis of this understanding, use it responsibly and intelligently for the sake of playing out your part in this world. That is trusteeship. What is trusteeship? You're endowed with this body, no doubt, for a limited amount of time by the grand order, by this intelligent order we call Ishvara. For that reason, don't misuse it, don't abuse it. Use it intelligently and responsibly. Educate it. On the basis of that education, respond intelligently in and through various activities in this world. And this attitude also releases us from making these spiritual statements that we don't really mean. I'm sure you've heard this before. Everything, Ishvara is everything. Nothing belongs to me. Okay, suppose you say that. How can now a smart person respond to that? Suppose you say everything is, you know, Ishvara and nothing belongs to me. Okay, so I'm just going to say this. Okay, so I'm just going to go into your house now and going to start eating your food. I'm going to have your wife, you know, I'm going to just kind of claim it as my own because it's all Ishvara, right? Are you going to say yes to that? No way. In other words, we make these statements and they sound really good. They sound, quote, spiritual, but we actually secretly don't mean them. Therefore, we're not saying now, okay, sure, see, everything is Ishvara. That is absolute fact. But at the same time, there is a sense of I am endowed with this body. I am endowed with a certain right to have my space, my house. So again, what are we saying here? Convert this sense of ownership. This is mine my computer, my status, my position, my, whatever you want to put in, fill in the blank, right? My whatever, convert that into trusteeship. What is trusteeship? Hey, this body has been gifted to me for intelligently to be used in this world. And in reference to this body, mind, intellect that you're carrying around 24/7, what do? You simply use it to influence your sphere of influence, contribute within your sphere of influence. Now the question is, what does this sphere of influence mean? Because usually we think it's supposed to be grandiose, like my purpose in life is to save the world and go out there and make a difference. These are all illusionary ideas that a person creates because they feel small, and so they want to kind of be out there to feel big. So sphere of influence simply means, where can I take a part right now? Whatever the environment is the environment asking me to do something right now? If yes, then contribute if you can. If not, then leave it alone. So now I want to show you a nice video, which my own teacher has showed me. And it's going to help us to see what it means to have sphere of influence and to contribute within that alone. And this video is going to be a observation exercise. So I want you to look at this video and observe what you pick up. The topic of this video can be contribute within your sphere of influence.
सर आपके लिए उस पार कार का इंतजाम किया है सर आइए सर ये चल चल जाओ बोला क्या बात करता है क्या ऊपर से जाएगा क्या ऊपर से जा
गया मेन शो
I hate this country. कुछ करो ना।
अब मैं वहां जाके क्या उखाड़ लूंगा?
कैसी जाने बूंदे आई, जाने कैसा दर्द लाई, सामने क्या है ये तेरे, क्यों रुका है तू बता दे हो। तुझको पार लेगा, कौन होगा वो मसीहा, वो जिसे तू ढूंढता है, वो ही है तू वही है। तुझ में तेरा रास्ता है, तुझ में तेरा है सहारा, तू ही तुझको पार लेगा, तू ही है तेरा किनारा। तुझ में तेरा रास्ता है, तुझ में तेरा है सहारा, तू ही तुझको पार लेगा, तू ही है तेरा किनारा। जिसे ढूंढता है तू ही रे, तू ही रे, तू ही रे तेरा मसीहा हो।
Okay, what do we observe? Anything that strikes you?
So it was just like that child, just by his actions inspired the other people and was able to mobilize. So even though he was small, just his actions was inspiring and he had an effect and he mobilized everyone into action.
Indeed, indeed. Small child, such a huge impact. Okay, what else did we pick up?
I noticed how everyone was absorbed in their own little world, right? Like the couple fighting in the car, not caring about it, what was happening or what they could do to improve the situation. But as soon as they did get involved with that, it improved not only their situation, but everyone else's.
Yeah, okay, good. Anything else?
Yeah, I think in life we have a choice, and we can choose to sit back and do nothing or do something.
Good, good.
And collectively, we can do a lot of things.
I noticed how good everyone felt at the end when they contributed.
Good, yeah, indeed. Wow. Okay. Kritika, you had your hand up?
I just wanted to say that a lot of times our first instinct might be to sort of virtue signal and tell everyone what's wrong and what they need to do, rather than, you know, taking the first step and doing what we can. So for me, the video was about the child just taking an action and doing what he could, rather than go out lecturing the politician or the other people that, look, I'm so small,
Yeah.
you're so big, you must do that and you must do this, this is how it should be done.
Yeah.
Because that way I don't think people would do anything. They would maybe listen, digest 10% of it. You can't mobilize a crowd. I think that should not be our intention as well. We should just focus on what we can do as a person, rather than, you know, lecture other people and improve their lives. I mean, that's not for us to do.
Yeah, beautiful, Kritika. Very nicely put. Okay, very good, Kritika. Okay, anything else?
Also, the child, it was not, the action of the child was not dictated by logic or thinking or anything. Like, he went and did what he thought was what he felt like, and within his sphere of influence, without aiming at whether he's going to be successful or unsuccessful.
Yeah, that's such a good point. In other words, it wasn't, you know, it's not about putting my my attention into whether I'm going to be successful or not. It's just do if you can. If not, then fine. You know, at least you're going to have some effect, because every cause has an effect. That is just a law. Okay. Anything else, Meena?
Yeah, the song had very good catching line. It says, "You are your own God."
Yeah, good.
And the other thing I got from the video is that don't complain and be in the solution mode, because everybody else was complaining.
Yeah, super.
But as soon as they started participating in the solution, as the little child has, you know, started. And the last one was God helps those who help themselves.
Yeah, good. Okay.
These are the three things that I got from this video.
Okay, Robert. Thank you, Meena. Very good, Meena. Thank you.
Interesting to note that the first people to come and help were young people, because they're not so programmed and so cynical. They're open to that influence, and they do it joyfully.
Indeed, indeed. So all of you are sharing these beautiful opinions, and I cannot actually add more because you basically covered it. And I think the point is very clear. No matter how small we are, we still make a huge difference. And it's not about complaining. It's not about saying, oh, you know, I'm supposed to go out there. Hey, where is that? It's all in my mind. In other words, you look at your environment and you say, where can I start from where I'm at right now? That is what's called sphere of influence. And that naturally leads to thoughts, which then get you to the next stage. So this is a perfect and a lovely attitude of life, just like this little kid. And even after he accomplishes this, he's not like, oh, look at me, you know, I'm so proud. I took action and you didn't, you know, you policemen are supposed to do all of the work. It's not about that. It's just about do what you can and then let the environment, you know, respond or not respond. That is up to them. Okay. Now let's go into verse 15. Yasmano dvijate lokaha, lokano dvijate chayaha, harshamarshabhayo dvegaihi, mukto yahsachame priyaha.
One because of whom people do not get disturbed, and who does not get disturbed by people, and who is free from elation, intolerance, fear, and anxiety, he is beloved to me.
And then this is a person who is not a source, just a little bit down.
This is a person who is not a source of agitation for any living being. Further, he himself does not get disturbed by the world. Lokat na udavitate chaya. The spontaneous expression of the yani is an important sadhana for the mumukshuku. He is not afraid of the world, which, though it is a great accomplishment, is not enough. Even a tyrant does not seem to be afraid of the world, but he is not one from whom the world has no fear. Both have to be said. Fear of the world and therefore dependence upon it is largely based on self-judgment. What you think about yourself is one aspect of it, but what others think is an integral part of self-judgment. Then there is further complication of the difference between what others think and what you think they think. You can see how much you live in your own thought world. Let us see the fallacies of some of this thinking. What I think about myself is negated by the Shastra as not true, and what others think about me I do not really know. They view me through their own projections of which I have no knowledge, and my objectivity is obscured by my own fears and anxieties. If my estimation of myself is not very great, my conclusions about what others think of me is not going to be difficult to predict. Conditioned by my own thinking about myself, I draw conclusions about what others think of me, and what others think seems to be very important. We spend so much time and energy convincing others that we are not what they think. This is all because our security and happiness depend upon the world in the form of opinion of others. Their frowns and smiles seem to determine when we are happy or unhappy. Here, however, is a person who has no fear of being disturbed by the world. A foolhardy person also may respond fearlessly to situations, but he or she will eventually be disturbed. The fearlessness that Bhagwan is talking of here is not that of a tyrant or of foolhardiness. You can be disturbed by others only to the extent you allow them to disturb you, and others will be disturbing as long as you depend on them for a sense of well-being.
Okay, that's enough. Super. Thanks, Nagesh. Okay, Swami Paramarthananda, he's one of my, from Chennai, one of my Vedanta teachers. He puts this in a very nice form, and I'm going to give you what he says and also what Dayananda says. He says there's two kinds of people. One of them is having a heart like a rock. My heart is like a rock. It's hard. Any criticism bounces off. You tell me anything, bounces right off. Doesn't touch me. But what's the negative of this? Because everything has a pro and con, right? The negative is it produces insensitivity. In other words, the person ends up unknowingly hurting others through language, through inappropriate behavior, through not paying attention to others' feelings, etc. Why? Because your heart is like a rock, right? You're strong. And then the second type is the one who has a heart like a tender flower. I'm sure we also know these types. What's the pro of these? Overly sensitive, right? They pick up everything. They are so sensitive and considerate to your feelings. They will definitely pick it up even before you can yourself. In other words, they're careful in handling matters. Extra care to not hurt others' feelings. But what's the negative? What's the negative of this, if you want to call it a negative? Easily hurt by anything, by the smallest things. Emotions stay for days. It's like it's like walking on eggshells around them. One eggshell cracks, they're hurt. So these two types are the two extreme versions. Now, what is a jnani type? What is a wise person like? Paramartha nicely says he is the one who is like a flower handling people. So with you, when handling people, when handling the world, when handling experiences, I'm like a flower. What does this mean? Considerate. That means I do take the time to be considerate. I don't ignore you as just another person out there who's going through a hard time. I actually, take the time to emphasize, to kind of, have some feelings with you, and friendly, considerate and friendly. But a heart like a rock when receiving experiences. This means I'm objective and factual. Doesn't mean I deny experiences. I'm just objective. This is an experience. Let's not get entangled or enmeshed in it. It's a fact. Here's what's presented to me. So just remaining factual about it, not making it more than it should be or less than it is. Why is this important? Because the more sensitive the mind becomes, if you've noticed, that the more you start to pick up the insensitivity around you. The more you start to learn into the Shastra and how the human behavior operates, the more you start to see this all around you. Therefore, it is very important to have a sense of accommodation in order to have, to accommodate other people's, quote, immaturity. Otherwise, what's going to happen? We're going to start criticizing. There's such a long way to go. Not even anywhere close to, progress. So this means that your own progress can be your own downfall. How? By not addressing your emotions, by not having that sense of accommodation. So this means I have to develop that sense of everyone is going through a stage of life. And this means I have to understand and come from that standpoint. Otherwise, then you're going to start putting people into boxes. Box A, box B, box C. And where does that fit in the aspect of non-dualism, of Advaita? Taking the world, which is one, and putting it into boxes, according to what? My emotional downfalls. So this means we have to be careful on the fact of, we have to accommodate the world. Now, if you look at a big guitar player, for example, a guitar player, has highly sensitive ears, does it not? Does she not? Yes. So this means that through the course of time, they develop that ear. But to the rest of us, it's like, what's the difference between this string and that string? But to him or her, huge difference. In the same way for a jnani. One small difference, a sensitive mind picks it up. Whereas one whose mind is still gross and remaining at that surface, that depth is yet to be developed. Therefore, that jnani is yasmat lokaha na udnijate. In other words, jnani is one who doesn't provoke agitation in the world or in people. I do not provoke agitation in you. Why? Because the person is sensitive, heart like a flower, and the one who doesn't get disturbed by worldly affairs, heart like a rock, objective, factual. Why does that wise person not get disturbed by the worldly affairs? Because we said earlier on, everything goes through sixfold modifications. Everything, including you. You are in a state of existence, potential. You get born. You go through birth. You go through growth. You go through maturity, decay, and disease. Those 6 stages, everything goes through. So this means I have to accommodate that everything goes in this world through these 6 stages. On the basis of that, you can have more compassion, more sense of patience. How do I put this into practice, into real life as sadhana? If you are agitated, suppose you're agitated by others right now, or something in your, or turn on the TV, agitated by what people are doing, what they're saying and so on, suppose, or you're concerned what others think, like about you and where you stand and how you are, and suppose that. Or at work, you go to work and you're just always concerned what others are thinking about you, what your colleagues are thinking about you, what they're talking about you. Now, what's the reason for this? 2 possibilities. That means I am projecting onto them. I am projecting my expectations of how they're supposed to be. Because they do not meet those expectations, I get agitated. This means I have a sense of intolerance. I develop a limited conclusion about the world. And if the world doesn't fit that limited conclusion, then what happens? I get agitated. And then I project that emotion onto that object, which I think is the cause of my agitation. But what's the actual cause? My limited conclusion about how the world's supposed to be. The second reason why you could be agitated or caring about what others are thinking all the time is because of your own narratives. What is a narrative? Something comes from the background, usually from childhood. That story, you're not good enough, you should be more, whatever you do, you're not better than your sister's much better, your brother is better than you. So all of these stories we pick up and we hold for a long time. And even a person who has full knowledge, full understanding of what this reality is about, that narrative still continues ringing in the background. And that denies one, the cheerfulness. So this means the person has to address that narrative. And that narrative then gets mistaken as the environment is the cause. So then I start blaming the environment instead of looking at my own narratives. So this is called the blaming mode. What is the blaming mode? I blame he or she is the cause, or that is the cause of my obstacles in life. The tree is the cause, like you saw in the video, of us not getting to work. But what's the actual cause? Not taking action, not willing to look what is inside me, inside my mind. Suppose the world is agitated by you. Suppose someone doesn't find you kind of like fancy, or they're just annoyed by your presence. What is the cause of this? It could be 2 reasons. One, that person could be projecting onto you. So now this is a reversal role. So it means they're expecting you to be in a certain way, certain method. And since you're not, because you're just being yourself, then they have no choice but to project. All you can do is pray for them. Let this person discover where they can change, and they have the strength to make those changes, and may have also have the clarity to know those areas which they cannot change. Because we often spend time changing those things which we cannot change, and avoiding those things which we should change. And the second reason is because of your own behavior. So this means you need to look at your own behavior. Could it be doing something that is inappropriate? Could I be ignoring some variables in the environment that are causing the agitation? And why else does this jnani not cause agitation. The other way, more philosophical, is to say because a jnani generally is content with themselves. So this means they have very little activity in the world, not going around traveling, you know, constant travel packages and kind of going to parties here and there, you know, because every time you go out there, you're actually creating activity, right? You're creating more, you know, more emissions, more, you know, you're stepping on insects and, you know, you're doing something. But a jnani is generally content with what they are. So this means very little activity for a jnani. This is the next statement in the verse. Harsha, amarsha, bhaya, udvegaihi. This is internal freedom from harsha. What is harsha? Freedom from overexcitement. If a person is overexcited, what happens? We lose our discriminating power. The moment that overexcitement comes, goodbye to intellect, because all of the emotions start to flood in that moment. It feels good, I get it, but at the expense of what? Veiling the buddhi. And then he says, Krishna says, amarsha, freedom from amarsha, freedom from intolerance. Intolerance from what? Restlessness, freedom from restlessness, impatience, and irritability. Now let's make this more concrete. What does it mean to have freedom from intolerance? You're going to say intolerance towards what? First of all, how is this person supposed to have freedom from intolerance? Firstly, understand everyone is going through their own pace in life. This means everyone deserves a level of patience, a level of respect, a level of understanding. Because the first thing we do is we often judge, you know, what a XYZ person for doing this. You know, pause. They have a certain history, a certain background. You know, I could be grown up in a family that is extremely disadvantaged. And on the basis of that, they picked up a few habits from father, you know, abusive father, some, you know, friends that got them in the wrong circle. And on the basis of that, they picked those habits up and now they're playing these habits out. So this means we have to understand that there is a much more to the person than just that initial behavior. There's a story behind the behavior, and it is the person's job to consider the story. If I don't consider the story, I only stay at the surface. What is depth? I look beyond what I'm seeing. I look beyond the perception. This intolerance can also mean in reference to not wishing or not liking others' success or happiness. This is very common. If someone's successful or they're happy, in that moment, I'm not happy. I don't feel happy. Why? Because in contrast to that person, to their state, my state is over there. So what do? We mentally put them down. This is called jealousy. So what is jealousy? Seeing someone happy or someone successful, and then in order to feel good, we do what? Instead of appreciating them, we actually put them down. And we say, okay, now that I've put them down at my level, which is mediocre compared to wherever they're happen to be, I now feel good. This is called jealousy. And what is a jnani, a wise person? He or she is free from jealousy. Why? Because they know that every skill, every talent, every success resolves into Ishvara, resolves into the whole. And is a jnani apart from the whole? Absolutely not. Therefore, every success is my own glory. That is a direct understanding of a wise person. Instead of putting that success as their success, it is their success. And the fact is they deserve it because they worked hard for it. That's number one. Number two is that success is also my success because we're not apart. That is a direct understanding of a wise person. Therefore, there's no space for jealousy. There's no space for putting others down because you're putting yourself down. Bhaya udvegaihi, free from the fear of failure. Because a wise person, we talked about interconnectedness some time ago, understands their interconnected relationship with the whole, with the grand order. If the person has that understanding, then there is no fear of failure. Because fear of failure means what? There is some God that's going to what? Cause me to fail. Someone's, kind of like watching over there at some place, and if I do something wrong, I'm going to fail. No, if you align yourself with the grand order, with Dharma, where's the question of failure? And even if it is failure, then you still say, well, I do not know everything. I don't have all knowledge in this world. On the basis of that, sure, there are some mistakes that we can make. What are some things that we have fear towards? I'll start. Fear of competing theories, competing schools. Suppose you're in one school, like Advaita, and now there's this fear. What if another school has a better methodology than the one I'm at? And so then we're kind of like afraid. We don't want to like hear what other schools have to say because we're afraid they may say something to completely overthrow my entire understanding. So we kind of protect our own knowledge, our own school, and then we kind of push everything aside. That is a fear in itself. What other fears do we have?
With this Vedanta, I have fear that what if it is just another Jiv Srishti that all these saints and sadhus have created? Because we say that Ishvara or the absolute truth is beyond our sense perception. And we keep discussing a lot about it through our senses. So I just feel, what if is it just another Jiv Srishti, our projection, and not the truth?
Right, yeah. Heard this one before, yeah. So what if the, Shastra itself is based on projection and it's got some errors there? What if this entire non-dual, understanding in itself was on the basis of someone's misinterpretation, and then just sort of crept into the scriptures, and now we're just sort of following this as the absolute truth?
I was also scared of that, like this similar fear, but I felt like it's actually a fear of like my uncertainty. Like when I feel like maybe this is not actually absolute truth. That means that I want some absolute truth, and I want it should be like aligned to my. It should be mine. Like it's something.
Okay.
Certainty, wanting certainty, and especially like another fear of neuroscience, suppose. Like maybe the scientists will discover consciousness in the brain someday.
Then I got it. Yeah, good. That's a good one. So, what if scientists discover something, they kind of, overthrow this idea that consciousness, which, we're all working for, I am consciousness. And now science says, this consciousness is just, a few cells working in the brain. And then, so you're not really, chasing anything, just chasing a bunch of cells, a bunch of atoms in your mind. You're like, oh no, what now? Okay, good, Krishna. What else? What else do we fear?
Oh, I asked it from from a teacher, and then and he said like okay, he told me, okay, Krishna, you'll become a neuroscientist one day, and then you'll prove that consciousness comes from the brain. And then I'll ask you the simple question that who saw this?
Okay, good. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, science usually, I get it. Science usually converts this idea of consciousness into this process in the brain. In other words, by the brain's workings, then comes consciousness. But in Vedanta, we say it's mental activity. Teachers also have this can also come in teacher, and that is, I do not wish to be to be a student anymore. So the teacher says, "Oh, I'm so identified with my teacher role. Now I don't want to learn anymore from others." So this means the teacher has fear of being, quote, "Oh, what if I get found out that I'm a student? Everyone else thinks I'm a teacher, but I'm actually a student." This is another fear that can come from a teacher in one level or the other. What about fear of being truthful, called being vulnerable? Because being truthful or vulnerable, or sharing one's concerns in life, one's hardships, what if those listeners are now going to judge me by me saying that? This is one reason, by the way, I actually make it a rule in my life that whenever I'm learning, I actually make it a rule to expose all my vulnerabilities to everyone. Number one, I've got nothing to lose. What am I hiding from? There's no one to hide from anyway, right? So might as well just share your vulnerabilities and get comfortable, because by sharing it, you become stronger. How do you become stronger? By letting out those things which I want to hold in.
Fear that there is no meaning to life, and that all the philosophies and systems are stories we tell ourselves so that we don't realize we're like a dog chasing its own tail.
What about fear of old age? Fear of change. Why do we fear change? Because we find comfort zone in what we already are. So if I change, I may then come out of my comfort zone. And since my whole life depends on being so comfortable based on this comfort zone, then if I accept a level of change, if I accept your viewpoint, if I consider your viewpoint, I may compromise, I may break down that model which I've built for so long, that I worked for so hard. It's kind of like building a deck of cards, right? And then one blow, it crashes on the floor. So what do? We say, no, back away. Don't come near, because you're going to destroy what I've been working for so hard. But the only way to grow, ironically, is to try something new, is to consider an alternative perspective. At least consider it. Anything else that we fear of change? These are all fears that a wise person is free of. Yeah?
Perhaps the two biggest fears would be pain and death.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this is, see now, we're now stepped into the Annamaya Kosha instantly. So this is a fear that is natural. You're not, a wise person doesn't now go, let me put myself in a cage with a lion and, it's okay, I'm not this body, I'm not this mind. So what? It's not like that, because there is also a level of reality called the body. And the body also is, you carry this body around, and that body will have a certain level of fear in terms of for its own survival, and it will act on the basis of that.
So I have one fear, Andre. Maybe let me see if you can help me. Like I have fear of flight.
Okay.
Okay, so it's like
a loca or airplane?
Airplane.
Okay.
The main reason is I feel that if I die in this flight, it will be useless death. Okay, had it been some kind, if I join some I don't know, some for useful cause, I'm okay in some sense, okay? Yeah. Like maybe if I'm fighting a war or some just war where I'm trying to help people, when I die in that war, okay, I can justify that. But here, when I take a flight, I am dying a worthless death.
Yeah, so you mean your fear of the airplane crashing?
Yes.
I mean,
not crashing,
yeah,
as such. Dying in that crash, which I feel is a worthless death.
You die in a crash, which you feel is a worthless death.
Yeah, I mean, dying in a war is worthful death, right? Like, for example, if Arjuna dies in war, just war, it is good.
Okay.
Because you are trying to do something, so you don't have that fear of going into war.
Got it. So it was a worthwhile death. It was a death for some bigger cause, and this death is just a airplane. Nobody cares about that death. Okay. Interesting one. Okay.
Yeah. Is there any way to overcome it?
Do we have any comments on this, on how to alleviate this kind of fear? Except not flying anymore.
I think everybody wants to die well.
It's true. We all want to die. I mean, fear of death is not a big problem. The bigger fear is, what if I die in pain? That's a much bigger fear for most. Yeah.
So pain is still tolerable when it is for just cause.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Is it the fear of death at that instant by that means, or is it fear of
useless death?
Yeah, but it is more a fear. I feel like it is more a fear of what we have achieved or what we have done in the past until that moment of death.
Yeah.
Like if you have, and it is not just that instant itself, it is the accumulation of that.
Well, it's also the fear of missing out, because once you're dead, you're not here. And so I think it's the fear of missing out evermore.
Yeah, one thing I want to add is, how are you living your life right now? Suppose you had one day to live, guaranteed, only 24 hours to live right now. So tomorrow, exact time, right, 24 hours from now, we'll all just go straight up. What kind of thoughts come to your mind? What kind of thoughts are coming there? What are you missing out? Are you missing out on anything? Are you saying, I wish I could have done more on this? Or I'm so glad that I've done this. What's happening? What narratives are now happening in your mind? Now listen to that conversation and then say, okay, so on the basis of what I'm hearing, let me now make a few changes. That's one thing you can do. The second is you can simply understand that the highest purpose of human birth is to recognize one's fullness, one's nature. So just like Arjuna, beautifully asked Krishna, what if this knowledge doesn't take place? What if I hear all this Bhagavad Gita knowledge and I die? and I don't attain moksha, then what? What does Krishna say? He says, don't worry about it, because whatever you have done, whatever you have understood, whatever you have grasped, that simply carries over. And then you get born into a new body and you simply continue, right? And you get another chance. So this means it's not really about, worthless death or purposeful death. It's rather about how are you living day to day? What are you engaged with every single day? That's what really matters. So that's why I say this exercise, if I had 24 hours to live, say, am I living, am I glad to have lived this life so far? Am I glad? Am I missing anything out? If the answer is, well, I wish I have kind of, listened to a few more things. I wish I was a little bit more productive and understood something else and did other things less, then those are probably some markers on what to work on. And that's what you can now integrate into your routine, into your method of self-growth.
Another fear of mine is the fear of having regrets, or repenting in the past. That is something that I cannot change. If I have taken the wrong path or
Yeah, sure. Sure. Okay, now this fear, is resolved through understanding, as I said earlier, no one's born with knowledge. Absolutely no one. We don't even know how to walk. The basic of the basics, we don't know. Language has been learned to you, has been taught to you. So and even the people that have taught you, they also are limited. So wherever you look, you've been taught by limited beings. So this means we will make mistakes. We will make mistakes along the road. On the basis of that, can we blame ourselves or have some regrets for not having done this or that? You simply didn't know any better. So in other words, we only make a correction when we discover a new alternative method. But that takes time. Someone needs to tell you, and you need to be receptive to hear that message. Because sometimes we hear the message and we're like, yeah, okay, whatever. In other words, the person's not ready to hear that message. So two factors are involved. You need to be ready to hear it, and someone actually needs to come and tell you the right knowledge. I can be ready all my life, but if there's no one going to tell me, right, then so you're an open person for learning who never learns. And if someone does come with the right knowledge and I'm not open, that is as equal as being open without any knowledge. So both have to take place. And that takes time, kala.
So is it sometimes that the person with the right knowledge, like a guru especially, so they have the means to open you up. So is it more advantageous if you have a person who knows than you're ready, but there's no person?
Yeah, sure. It's as I said, it's kind of it's a mixture of both, because the student has to be qualified. A certain level of qualification has to be there, like a certain level of discernment. Because suppose you just now sit down and listen. Okay, wow, great. Yeah, I believe you, whatever you're saying. And you don't use any judgment of your own. In other words, I haven't actually done anything. I've just kind of spoken, and I've kind of shown you a way. But then you sort of, okay, well, that's how things are. But then you go, okay, so once the session is over, that's where my work ends. No, so in other words, the student has to also take whatever they hear and then assertively apply it into their day-to-day actions, into their thoughts. So this means you have a job, but a teacher also has a job. This means the teacher has to expound the view, the vision of the whole, and integrate the whole, not only the emotions, the intellect, but entire universe. And then once you hear that message, you have to now go, okay, so let me take my time, my self-inquiry, it's called self-inquiry, and now let me bring what I've heard in class together according to my understanding. And if I don't understand something, then let me bring up that question in the next session. So it's a constant kind of student-teacher. It's a question and answer conversation that's going on. Yeah, so it is good if you have a teacher, but what if you're not open to the teacher, right? So then it's better to wait. And for example, my teacher Nima, she was 23 and she went to Swami Dayananda, who we're reading this book from. And she says, I want to do your 3-year course. And what did Dayananda say? No. Just like that, no. Go back into the world and get a few more years of experience. And she was quite disappointed. Why? Because she thought, well, I'm qualified. But he knew a lot better. He saw through her and said, go back and accumulate more years of working and getting some challenges, because that's going to give you context when you go into Vedanta. Suppose now I tell you, you got to purify your mind, and a person has no context of life. They just sort of come in and go, yeah, I've got no problems, I'm fine. But I tell you, go and socialize and you will find, those blind spots in you. And so this means I have to tell you to go into the world and get some experience so that those experiences can help you understand when the teacher is trying to bring these examples up. Okay, verse 16. Anapeksha shuchir dakshaha udasino gatavyataha sarvarambha parityagi yo madbhaktah same priyaha.
The one who has no dependence is clean, able and neutral, from whom fear has gone, who has completely given up all initiation of actions, and who is my devotee is beloved to me.
Can I continue? Jnani is not dependent on anything.
Anapekshaha, Sankara says, is someone who does not depend upon the relationship between the physical body, sense organs, and sense objects for his sense of well-being. He knows he is self-existent, not dependent upon any other factor, and does not suffer from the delusion that he is only alive if the body is alive. The prana that keeps the body alive is dependent upon him, and moreover, Atma does not breathe. Since only something that breathes will die, he is always alive. Atma is pure existence, Satya Vastu, and therefore does not depend upon prana, manas, buddhi, or anything else for its existence. Further, all things depend upon Atma for their coming to light, but Atma is self-evident, not depending upon anything for the establishment of its existence. In order to be full and free from any sense of imperfection, Atma depends upon nothing, because it is the content of any experienced happiness. Therefore, one who knows this is a anapeksa, free from dependence in every way. Concerns about externals, such as where will I live, do not exist for the one who knows himself, because he knows that everything is located in Atma, which is the adhisthana, the basis of the entire Jagat. This is not merely verbal. He sees that it happens to be the nature of Atma, and thus has no dependence at all upon situations.
Okay, thank you. Anapekshaha is not emotionally dependent on external factors. Now, I'm going to give you two understandings here. The first is cognitive understanding of what it means to not be emotionally dependent, and then a jnani's understanding. Do you depend on your own tongue? Are you emotionally attached to your tongue? That you wake up and go, oh, I'm just so lucky to have my tongue. I need my tongue. I need my tongue. No, why? Because from the reference of I, if the I means this body, whatever belongs to this body, I have no need to be emotionally dependent upon. This is why we always depend upon what? Things that are external to this physical body. Because I believe I am this body, this means the I stops at the edges of the skin. Whatever is outside the skin is not I anymore. On the basis of that, I now start to emotionally depend on things that are not part of this body. It means I haven't yet come in terms with this entire universe. I'm still categorizing the universe into different existences that I need to sort of kind of come in contact with for my own satisfaction. Now, what are some examples of emotional dependencies that we have? What about wanting to know lots of relative knowledge? I want to know everything about physics, how the universe came about, how it all kind of works, like the periodic table of elements. I have to know everything inside the body, right? Tell me, why do you want to know all this? Are you ever going to know all of this? No way. So what is it making the person want to know so much relative knowledge in this world? By the mere fact that I think that this knowledge is apart from what? This mind. This means this mind is separate from that knowledge. Therefore, if that knowledge becomes part of this mind, then I will now enjoy whatever that knowledge has. Or the news, wake up and, what's happening on the news around the world. Why? Let me ask you this question. Suppose you didn't watch the presidential, what happened in the last 5 months, with the president in USA. Suppose you never turned on the TV, would your life be any different right now?
Probably better.
100% different?
Probably better.
You have more time for study.
Yeah, exactly. In other words, your life actually would have been a lot better because you would be less stressed, right? You had more time, more focus. So the fact is, news, number one, even though it's interesting, if you just ask yourself from the standpoint of not having seen anything that's gone on in the last year, my circle of influence would have not been influenced in any way. Right? That's point number one. What's another form of emotional dependence? Checking email. Suppose you respond on a YouTube or Facebook comment, and then what do? We're like, oh, let me check 5 minutes later. What did they respond? Is there any responses? Oh no, I haven't got a response. I'm waiting for someone to respond. And how are they going to respond according to my response? I remember when I was traveling between Byron and Sydney, 2017, to teach at my parents' place. I was shocked, right? What I experienced every single morning. These fine gentlemen and fine ladies dressed in $1 million suit and pulling a phone every 5 minutes when there's no signal. It's like talking. Let me pull out my phone and just like drag the screen over. Let me see what icons are on the screen. Let me put the phone back in my pocket. Oh, okay. And then continue talking with their friend, and they pull out the phone again. Launch Tetris for like 5 minutes. In the middle of the Tetris, stop the game, put the phone back into the pocket, continue talking. Pull out the phone, just kind of click on the home screen, see what time it is, put the phone back in. It's like, oh my God. I couldn't believe every single time, no matter what person I was sitting next to, I saw this. So this really made me appreciate what it means to not be, kind of like entangled in the world, because it just, the mind is so flexible. It just takes on this news. It takes on, and it just wants to kind of check again, and it becomes emotionally dependent on the smallest things. Like, what about having a certain expectation? Suppose you say something and now you expect the teacher to respond in a certain way. Like, they haven't responded. They haven't kind of acknowledged what I said. So this is an expectation, is it not? This means I have an emotional dependence on how the teacher is going to respond to what I say. Very common. Or I have an emotional dependence how my fellow classmates are going to respond. Everyone's supposed to go, wow, that was the best thing I ever heard in my life. But it doesn't happen in real life. So this means we're now depending upon others to have a certain reaction. That's an emotional dependence. What about dependence on spiritual sadhana or some psychoactive substances to remain high, kind of like new ayahuasca every month? Why? Oh, I just want to remain high. I want to have like high vibrations. What about constantly looking at spiritual videos on YouTube and listening to audios? Why? So I can preserve my state of my sophisticated, because I feel so kind of like expanded after I hear a video. So the person ends up consuming constantly what I call spiritual entertainment. That's another dependence. What about expecting your beloved to treat you like a princess or a king 24/7? That's another emotional dependence. The reality is your beloved also has their own prarabdha karma. They're going to wake up not feeling 100%. That's going to then come onto you also. And you have to just simply engage with that. So this means it is impossible to expect your partner to be 24/7, on top of the game.
Andre, just a question. So when it's mentioned that concerns about externals, such as where will I live, do not exist for the one who knows himself. So are we just talking about the emotional dependences and not the physical ones? Just to be...
Oh, good. So yeah, physical, excellent, Kritika. So the physical, definitely, you have to, as I said, you carry this body. Is that what you meant? Your physical body, right? Yeah, you see.
Yeah, just like where will I live? I mean, in the sense that I would need a house, but
yeah, good.
House is emotional dependence, that I want a big house or, this kind of house.
Yeah.
That is sort of an emotional dependence, but having the need of a house, I thought was a sort of like a basic requirement.
Yeah, so see, we all need basic requirements. So again, now blow this up and say the jnani doesn't even need to eat food. So yes, you need food, right? You need a basic shelter. You need basic warmth. You need the basics in life in order to, just take the time to reflect and enjoy whatever you have. So it's not like now the jnani is going to go out in the rain and, and go, well, doesn't matter if I'm getting wet, it's all just, my body and I'm not the body. Okay. So yes, there is a level of maturity, a level of mature relationship with your shelter, with your food, with even someone that, is there to care for you. So again, we cannot now, put this into strong black or white notions and say, no, if you have a shelter and if you have a partner, then you're not a jnani. It doesn't work like that.
I have a question on what you just said and also on what you said about relationships previously.
Yeah.
So it seems that like Krishna and Arjuna were both householders. There are many of the teachers of the Upanishads were also householders, and they taught their children. And I also know that Nima got married to Surya later in her life. So I suppose my question is, yes, if they have the total vision, they don't depend on anything. However, they're still, at the same time that they're totally full and complete, there still must be a preference, because otherwise, why would they have a wife or children? So I'm asking, a jnani is okay with it or without it, but do they still have a preference for either sannyas, staying alone, or having a wife? I hope that wasn't too convoluted.
No, super. So again, everything is your choice. We're not putting anything into categories as to you should be like this and you shouldn't be like that. End of the day, when all is said and done, you just look at your humanness. As a human being, I have a certain preference. For example, a jnani goes to a restaurant, and in the restaurant, what are they going to say? Oh, I don't care what I eat. It's all just food. It's going to feed this body. They're going to have a certain preference for what food they like and what food they don't like. In that same way, the person can choose to be in a relationship. They can choose to be single. Both have advantages and disadvantages. If you're in a relationship, sure, you have another person to take care of, and you have to address their concerns. You have less time. As a single person, you have more time, but then you also miss that company sometimes, right? And relationship in most cases can be a lot more beneficial because you have someone to engage with, right? And they can help you, and it can help you reveal your blind spots, etc. But it is totally up to you.
Okay. Thank you.
On that note, can I share a small story from Krishna's life,
sure,
which is a parable? So all the gopis, who were the women who loved Krishna, came to Krishna and said, like, on the other side of Yamuna, there is sage Durvasa, who is a sage who got very angry very quick. We want to go, and we've heard that he's come, and we're going to seek his blessings, and we want to take a feast to him. But Yamuna river is flooding. How do we cross? So Krishna tells them, go to the Yamuna river and say, if Krishna is a true Brahmachari, please split open and give us a way. So they were very surprised, because Krishna was hanging around with all these women, 10,000 women all the time. How can he be a Brahmachari? So they went to Yamuna and said, like, if Krishna is a true Brahmachari, split up. And Yamuna split. They went to the other side and gave Durvasa Muni a feast. And he ate it with great relish. And then they said, we want to cross back. How do we do that? So Durvasa said, go back to Yamuna and say, if Durvasa has only eaten sagely meals, like, the juice of the Dhruva grass, split open. And they were like, he just had a huge feast and really enjoyed it. How is that possible? So they go and say it, and Yamuna splits open, and they come back to Krishna and said, please explain. And he said, like, both of us are jnanis, and we were not, like, I hang around with gopis as a reflection of your love to me. And I'm not attached to that. I am still, separate.
Yeah.
My Atma is still separate. And same with Durvasa. He ate the feast because you brought it to him with love, but his Atma still stands separate and watches it. And he's not involved in the sensual experience.
Yeah,
so
good. Yeah.
Statements were true.
Yeah, excellent. So this means inside I know I am free of all of this, and yet it doesn't deny me from participating in what's in my environment. It doesn't deny me from enjoying the gopis, enjoying this flavor and this variety of life. So this means jnani doesn't deny life. They don't push it away under the carpet and then justify I'm beyond all of it.
How do we know that whatever action we are taking, is it because of our being emotionally dependence, or is it just our preference? Like, what is the difference between having preferences and not being emotionally dependent?
Good. Okay. So, in other words, what's the difference between, because emotional dependence is actually a strong like. That means if I don't have it, then my life feels incomplete. Preference is, as someone, I think, as Thomas said, if it is in my life, I am fortunate indeed. It is a bonus. If it's not, it doesn't actually, it doesn't take away from my fullness. It doesn't sort of like make me now depressed and say, oh, you know, poor me, you know, I don't have it. So this means that preference means it is, if it is in your life, then excellent, right? It's a bonus, of course, you know, being in a relationship, etc. It is a bonus. If it's not, you don't use your free time and start going, oh, I wish I had it. You don't start imagining about it. That is one way. Yeah.
There's one more question that I have. When Dayananda told Nima that, you know, go and have experience and come back.
Yeah, United Nations, yeah.
And then he will teach this Vedanta and Upanishads to her, right?
Yeah.
And we have noticed and heard that in our Vedantic way of life, at the age of like till 25 age, they follow the Brahmachari, they go to the Rishi's ashram and get all the knowledge first and then start their worldly life.
Yeah.
So why? So I see a disconnect there, that in the Vedantic teachings, we teach the child first and then ask them to go into the world and start taking action and living life.
Yeah, good.
But here he's
go
and take experience first and then I'll teach.
Yeah, excellent question. So, you know, if you look at life in these 4 stages in Brahmachari, then we say, okay, you're supposed to now first go through this learning, and then after learning, then you go into the world. And then you brought up the question, well, for Nima, it's different, right? Now, Brahmachari doesn't, by the way, just mean Vedic knowledge. It can also mean just a general education about, you know, about yourself, your mathematics, geography, etc. So this means we also have to adapt the world according to where we live in our times today. So Brahmachari today doesn't now just mean Vedas. It just means that general education in school. And then when that school, you know, is over, then you can either continue your studies, something more advanced, something more Vedantic, or you can, you know, go into the world, get more experience, and then go into Vedanta. Whereas in the older ages, see, the world was much different, right? And, you know, we had these gurukulams, and then, you know, the family children used to live with the guru in the gurukulam, and the guru used to taught them the entire Vedic program. It was like 12, 13 years. And then after that, then they were qualified to go and into this, you know, strict into this next stage, grahasta. So this means the times have changed, and this, according to these times, we have to also adapt. But it doesn't now distract you. It doesn't deny you from being a brahmachari much later, because you can also be a brahmachari, right, in like, you know, 50, 60 if you want.
Now, the reason I was asking this question is experience of the world required to get the Vedantic knowledge? Because in Gurukulam way of life, it was not. So that is my question.
Right. So
whether it be brahmachari or not, that's not the question.
Yeah. So see, it doesn't, good, excellent question. So it doesn't now mean that that the brahmachari is now going to be qualified, all right, because experience is required. So this is why you go into brahmachari and then you go into grahasta, and that grahasta almost completes that stage of brahmachari, right? In other words, it adds context, it adds meaning. Yeah, it's kind of like, okay, now I see how all of this knowledge that I've learned, how it applies. And then on the basis of that, you meet your guru.
Yeah, wouldn't it depend upon your previous cycles of life, so it would vary for each individual?
Yeah, that is a contributing factor also, your samskaras that you come with. Yeah, see, again, I want to say this. We cannot put this into a linear approach, because see, sometimes some people have no experience with the world and yet they still get the knowledge. Why? Because they carry a certain samskara of understanding from their previous lives. And some of us need to get a lot of physical, worldly experience, and only on the basis of that, you can now come into Vedanta. And now Vedanta is going to make sense. So it's not like it's only one way is possible. We can go any way, right? Anyway, and so any way can work according to your unique composition, your unique personality.
I think it's true. Everybody's different. So if Dayananda said to Nimita, you know, do this, it's a one-off thing. It's not generalized for everybody.
Yeah.
Like for me, I had to go through life, and only now I'm sort of more interested in becoming, well, learning a bit more about, sannyasa and that sort of stuff. So I think everybody's different. They have a different approach to, or different way to come to this stage.
Indeed. And also, I want to extend what Dave said. Also, Dayananda, actually, he didn't say the same message to everyone, because Nima was quite surprised. She said, well, everyone else, I mean, they're also young like me and they're all getting in. Why are you denying me? So in other words, Dayananda saw much further. This is called Ishvara intuition. The moment you see the person, you can tell a lot about it, considering your own clarity is there. On the basis of that clarity, you say, go back into the world. Now it goes one step further. Suppose she said, you know what, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to go to another teacher, right? Because you're not the only one who's teaching 3-year course. I can go elsewhere. Suppose she did that. It would have not probably worked out, because she said specifically, yes, he was so right, because I needed to get success. I needed to get some worldly success, some obstacles in life, because on the basis of that, I was able to assimilate and become one of the top students in Dayananda's 3-year course. So he was absolutely right on the basis. But it also requires the students' trust, because she didn't even have a relationship with Dayananda. She just took the word. Okay, you say so, I'm going to postpone my life 3 years on the basis of what you said. So imagine the amount of trust that goes on between those two, the student and the teacher.
Andre, I recall when I first met my initial guru in Australia, she said that we have to exhaust some of our vasanas before we can actually sit in a space with a guru and actually allow ourselves to grasp the knowledge. So I felt that what she was saying, when I first met her, I felt that that was the right time to go through the guru's experience. And I did not grasp everything, but in stages I went to different, like the same understanding concept, but different gurus came into my life, and now finally yourself. Right. So I think that each time there's exhaustion of some vasanas in my life. Yeah. And finally you come to realize that this is it, this is what you need to go through.
Yeah, good. So everyone plays a role in your life. This is
got to be ready, I think, for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So and everyone has contributed, because everyone was a stepping stone to where you are right now. Yeah. So in the same thing with the Brahmachari, it's a stepping stone, and then you go to Grihastha, it's a stepping stone, and then you find your guru, and then that's a stepping stone. Or you can also go the other way around. You can go into Vedanta and you say, I don't get any of this. I'm totally lost. And then what does the teacher say? That is because you need more qualifications. Go back into the world, experience some downfalls, and then you will learn some humility, and then you will come back and you will really want to be hungry for this knowledge, right? So you can go either like the first way or the second way. Again, we cannot put life into categories or into linearity. Now let's close this with jnanis. What does a jnani understand according to anapekshaha, which is not emotionally dependent on external factors? All this, not just this, because this is part of all this, right? Not just the body, but all this is my own glorious Maya Shakti. That's Jnani's understanding. What is Maya? The Triguna Shakti, because of which this entire world comes. Now, just to give you a little bit more context, think about a lucid dreamer. Suppose you're having a dream and you're lucid. You're totally alert about your dream. And you look around and you say, wow, so real. Clouds, right? People, I'm talking, I'm hearing voices, I'm smelling, I'm tasting. It's so real. I'm even talking about how real it is. And yet, right, I'm still finding myself I know it's a dream, but I still find myself as though I am part of the dream. And you're looking around and you're talking about, the things that you're seeing, that you're perceiving, you're sensing, you're tasting, and you're having an ice cream going, wow, such a delicious ice cream, right? And you say, all of this is the power of my mind, everything. My own mind has the power to make it as though me, the one because of whom this entire world exists, am a separate individual by the power of my own mind. In the same way, a jnani, what does a jnani understand? All this is my own Maya Shakti. Nothing is away from me. All this resolves into me alone. A little metaphor for further understanding this is, imagine, we have a beautiful Vedantic metaphor, is imagine a sunlight that is shining on a bucket of water. Inside now bucket represents your physical Annamaya Kosha, your stula Sharira, your physical body. And inside the bucket is what? The water. Now, the water represents just Sukshma Sharira, your Manomaya, Vijnanamaya Kosha. That means your thoughts, your emotions. Now, suppose that water, that mind, by the way, is dirty. How much of that sunlight is going to penetrate? Not a lot at all. So what does this mean? The more I clean that water, that mind, the more that light, which is always shining, can penetrate through that light, through that water, through that mind. But does it stop there? Absolutely not. Because what's the point of having a pure mind? You still have to educate that mind. What is the nature of this light which is illuminating my thoughts? I have to know that through the Shastra, through the Pramana. That's when you go to a guru to tell you the very alertness because of which is able to be alert to everything constantly, 24/7, to everything all the time. That very awareness, that very alertness that is always alert, aware, is your nature, is that light which is shining in and through all buckets of water. So you can have 7.5 billion buckets, all of them are illumined by the one sunlight, by the one self. The one who knows who they are, what? They have not only purified that water, that mind, but also they have gotten now the education to tell them what is that because of which these thoughts or this water is validated, is constantly shone upon. So this means it's a two-step process. One, purify the mind, and two, get educated. What is illuminating this very mind? Now, what is the nature of the sunlight? Sunlight, by the way, represents Atma. What is the nature of Atma? Ananda, limitlessness. How does this limitlessness manifest through the physical mind? As cheerfulness. That is why Rama or Krishna are what? Cheerful. No matter what happens, just cheerful. Why? Because the mind is pure, and I also know the nature of this light, which is always illuminating all of my thoughts. And finally, homework before we close is, suppose you were locked up in a dungeon, kind of like Devaki and Vasudev, right? And you were locked up. What objects, people, experiences would you miss? And what are you saying about your life? Have you done everything there is to do in life up to that point, knowing you will never again see the world? If not, you know what to work on. You know what to bring more into your life. The second way that you can look at as objects, as from this objective standpoint, like a wise person, is you can say, what is the nature of this object, which I happen to be emotionally dependent upon? This is a form of self-inquiry to get to know yourself better, to get to know yourself more. So this is what about knowing yourself as a person, knowing who you are as this both a relative person, but also as the absolute being. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.